Rain tapped softly against the cafe windows as the single father sat at the small wooden table, staring at the untouched glass of water in front of him. His fingers kept rubbing the edge of the table as if he were trying to smooth out the nervousness running through his veins. This was supposed to be simple. Just a blind date. Just one evening where he tried to remember what life looked like before responsibility became heavier than his own heartbeat. But the truth was, he almost didn't come. He had nearly turned the car around 3 times on the way here, thinking about the quiet little apartment where his daughter was probably finishing her homework with the babysitter. Thinking about the empty chair that had once belonged to his wife. Thinking about how long it had been since he'd allowed anyone new into his life. Before the story continues, take a moment. If you believe every story hides a lesson somewhere inside it, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to Kindness Stories. Your support keeps these stories alive. The cafe smelled of roasted coffee beans and warm bread. A soft golden glow hung above the tables, making the rainy evening outside feel distant and blurry. People talked in quiet voices, spoons clinked against ceramic cups, and somewhere behind the counter a coffee machine hissed like distant steam. Yet to him, the room felt strangely silent. His thoughts were louder than everything else. He wasn't here looking for love. He was here because his sister had insisted he try again. 3 years had passed since the accident. 3 years since the night a phone call split his world into a before and an after. In those 3 years, he had learned how to braid a little girl's hair, how to pack school lunches that wouldn't embarrass her, and how to hide the quiet grief that sometimes arrived at night like a storm. His life had become a careful routine built entirely around one small person who called him Dad. Dating felt impossible, and then she arrived. He noticed her the moment she stepped through the door, shaking the rain gently from her coat. She moved carefully through the cafe, scanning the room with a small, uncertain smile. There was something calm about her presence, something warm but slightly guarded. She wore simple glasses, a deep maroon cardigan over a light blouse, and her dark hair fell softly over her shoulders. For a second, he considered pretending he wasn't the man she was looking for. But their eyes met, and suddenly, there was no turning back. She walked toward the table with a quiet confidence that felt both gentle and brave. When she sat down, the space between them filled with the awkward silence that only strangers sharing something personal can understand. The kind of silence where 2 people carry invisible stories neither one knows yet. At first, it was simple conversation. Weather, work, the usual polite details people use to build bridges between unfamiliar lives. But slowly, something shifted. He noticed it in the way she listened. Not the way people usually listen while waiting for their turn to talk. She listened like someone who truly wanted to understand the spaces between his words. Like she could hear the things he wasn't saying. When he mentioned his daughter, her eyes softened immediately. When he casually explained that he was raising her alone, she didn't react with pity the way others often did. Instead, she just nodded gently, as if that fact alone already told her 100 things about him. Outside, the rain grew heavier. Inside, the cafe lights flickered softly against the glass windows, painting reflections across the room. The world felt smaller somehow, quieter. He hadn't planned to say anything about his wife. But somehow, he did. The words came slowly, unevenly, like they had been waiting a long time for permission to exist. He told her about the accident. About the hospital hallway that smelled like antiseptic and fear. About holding his daughter while trying to explain something he still didn't understand himself. He expected the mood to collapse after that. Most first dates didn't survive grief. But she didn't pull away. She didn't try to fix the pain or change the subject. She simply stayed. And in that quiet moment, he realized something surprising. This woman wasn't uncomfortable with sadness. She understood it. Eventually, the conversation turned toward her life. She spoke calmly about her work, her family, the small routines that filled her days. There was kindness in the way she described people, like she saw the good in them even when they probably didn't see it themselves. But there was also something else. Something unspoken. He noticed the way she sometimes paused before answering certain questions, like she was carefully choosing how much of herself to reveal. The cafe had started to empty by then. Chairs scraped softly across the floor as staff prepared for closing. Outside, the rain slowed into a mist that blurred the streetlights into glowing halos. And then she shared the thing that changed everything. Years ago, she explained quietly, she had been engaged. Not long before the wedding, her fiancé had died suddenly from a heart condition no one knew he had. The room seemed to freeze around them. Two strangers, two different lives, but the same kind of loss. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Yet something invisible passed between them in that silence. Not sadness exactly, something deeper. The quiet understanding that comes when two people realize they've both been shaped by the same storm. He had come here expecting small talk and awkward politeness. Instead, he had found someone who understood the invisible weight he carried every day. And maybe she saw the same thing in him. For the first time in years, he didn't feel like the only person in the room carrying a broken piece of the past. The cafe lights dimmed slightly as closing time approached, but neither of them noticed. Because the evening had become something neither of them expected. Not romance, not yet, but something quieter and perhaps more powerful. Recognition. If this story is touching something inside you right now, take a moment to like, comment, and share it. Stories like this remind us that sometimes the most important moments happen in the quietest ways. And before the ending, tell us in the comments, have you ever met someone who understood your pain without you having to explain it? As they finally stepped outside, the rain had stopped completely. The street glistened under soft amber lights, and the air smelled fresh and new. They stood there for a moment, neither rushing to say goodbye. Because both of them knew something small but meaningful had happened tonight. Not a miracle, not a perfect ending, just two wounded lives briefly crossing paths in a way that made the future feel a little less lonely. And sometimes, that is the beginning of everything.